There are really only two reasons that a human being does anything. We either want to move closer to something that feels good, or we want to move further away from something that feels bad. At your most basic level of motivation, everything you do is in pursuit of one of these two goals, or sometimes both of them at the same time. The way that these principles play out in our daily lives, though, can be a little bit more complicated because not everything can be neatly separated into these like good or bad categories. Because there are some things that feel really good when we do them, but bad afterwards, like getting drunk or eating too much cheesecake, for example. And there are things that feel bad when we do them, but relatively good afterwards, like going for a run or cleaning your house. I know some people genuinely enjoy doing those things, but most of us only do them because of how we feel afterwards. Sometimes we intentionally move closer to something that feels bad today based on the hope that it will lead to something feeling good later. And sometimes we do something that feels good today, knowing that it will lead to feeling really bad later because we are so desperate for a positive emotional experience that we temporarily stop caring about the long-term consequences of our choices. Some of us are inherently more driven by how things feel in the moment, while others find it easier to think of the long-term implications. But all of us, every person out there, is significantly motivated, or depending on how much of a behaviorist you are, you could even say controlled by the feelings that we have in response to things that happen. That's why we can conduct studies on animals and generalize the results to human beings to a reasonable degree, because despite all of our metacognitions and delayed gratifications and perspective taking, our reasons for doing what we do are not so different from those of a rat in a maze or a pigeon in a cage. But if all motivation comes from your feelings, good or bad, what happens to a person who doesn't feel anything? Everybody, I think, has moments like that, right? Like periods where we're so exhausted or overwhelmed or even just understimulated that we just sort of go blank for a while. This is called dissociation. For most people, this is a pretty brief and infrequent experience, and they come back online, so to speak, before any major damage is done in their life. But for some of us, myself included, this shutdown can happen on a much more consistent chronic level. And this can either happen because we have a chronic mental health condition, or it can happen because something so terrible or so tragic has happened to us that it has completely taken our emotional system offline, at least for a while. So what do you do when everything that motivates you is gone and you don't know when it's going to come back? How do you move forward in your life when, for one reason or another, none of the fragile, fickle emotional connections in your brain that you rely upon to want to do anything are interacting with one another in a way that produces anything? In my life, depression has shown up in two very distinct ways. Sometimes everything just hurts, even the things that normally feel good. And life during these times becomes inevitable, inescapable emotional pain. Spending time with people I love just reminds me of the grief I'll feel when something tears us apart, whether that thing is death or just the crap of this world. The second anything good comes into my life, my first thought is like this sharp, skeptical, I wonder how long this is going to last. It's a very cynical, like everything is so temporary and fragile. But the second type of depression is what I call the emptiness. And it isn't pain exactly. It is the absence of everything that makes me feel like a person, including pain. And it is so bizarre to have both of these and kind of go back and forth between them, because when everything hurts, you think that you would do anything to make the pain stop. But when you can't feel anything, you are desperate for any emotion, even pain. You always want the one you don't have. The pain, to some degree, still motivates me. It motivates me to hide, to avoid, and to withdraw, but I do still feel motivated. The emptiness removes my motivation. If nothing feels good or bad, all of my desire to do anything is lost. And in the past, I have allowed the emptiness to completely consume my life, and it has wiped out entire chapters of my existence. There are years of life that I remember like only a few minutes of because nothing happened. I didn't feel anything, so I didn't do anything, so I don't remember anything. So, assuming that I have accurately described something that you experience, at least from time to time, I'd like to use our time today to share with you the 3 strategies that I have come to rely upon when I am battling the emptiness. And I want to be clear, these aren't necessarily strategies that are going to make it like go away. In my experience, no matter how well I handle these periods of life, there is always a time component. Like they just have to run their course to some degree. I think of it a lot like catching a virus. Even if you rest and take your medicine and get plenty of fluids, your antibodies still need time to do their work. I think it's the same with our neurons, our brain cells. These are strategies that will help your life not fall apart during the emptiness. In other words, they may not stop the storm, but they might be able to help make sure that the storm doesn't sink your ship. The first is to act on values, not on feelings. If feelings are the main battery for your life, values can be sort of like your reserve battery. I don't think that we can be motivated solely by values indefinitely, but they can keep us functioning for a while during a period of time when we don't really feel anything. Shifting from feelings-based motivation, which is sort of the default human mode, to values-based motivation is mostly a matter of asking yourself different questions and or changing the time frames that you focus on. When I need to function based off of my values instead of my feelings, I don't ask myself questions like, do I really want to do this right now? Or do I think I'll enjoy this? Because the answer to every single one of those questions is no, of course not. I don't feel anything. And it doesn't even matter what the thing is. The answer is a blanket, nope, not interested. So instead, I ask myself the question, what would the person I want to be do in this situation? And then to the best of my ability, I do that thing no matter how I feel about that thing. For example, I am a father of 2 kids, and I want to be the kind of father who plays with his kids until they are too old to want to play with him anymore, because that's my value. Under the best of circumstances, when my brain is working properly, I genuinely enjoy playing with my kids. So it's easy. When the opportunity arises, it's an easy yes, of course I want to do that. But as much as I hate to admit it, sometimes the emptiness hits me so hard that I don't even enjoy my children. It's not their fault. It has nothing to do with them and everything to do with me, but it still happens. However, no matter how I am feeling, the type of father that I want to be does not change. My values are, thankfully, not anywhere near as fickle as my feelings. So I still play with my kids when I feel empty, even if I experience no joy from it whatsoever, because that's who I want to be. Now take that example and apply it to everything. And I know that these questions I'm describing, this, do I really want to do this or not? These might not be conscious questions. You might not like dialogue with yourself in a narrative manner throughout your day and really be asking and answering these things in a way that you're aware of. Often these are subconscious automatic processes that you don't even notice, but you can still consciously ask yourself the values-driven questions to guide your behavior. So whether you do or don't experience those conscious questions, it doesn't change the strategy. I also mentioned shifting the focus of the time frame. Most of us tend to focus on how things feel right now, and that's one of the reasons that the emptiness can be so devastating. I know from experience that I can still feel good or bad about decisions I made when I feel empty or when I felt empty during periods when I have access to my feelings again. I can feel guilt, shame, grief, and regret about making poor choices that screwed up my life, or I can feel joy, accomplishment, or satisfaction from making good choices, even if I felt nothing while making the choice. Sticking with the same example, my kids. I don't want to look back on the time when they were young and see missed opportunities to engage with them because of the way I felt. Even if in the moment, the emptiness is so all-consuming that I don't think I'll care, ever, about what I do or don't do. I've been through this enough times to know that that is a lie. It is a lie. I do care. I just don't feel that I care right now, but I will care again someday. So if either playing or not playing with my kids both feel like nothing today, then I ask myself, which one will feel better when I'm 80? Assuming I even live to be 80 and have an intact memory by then, it's just a thought exercise. Don't get too literal about it. Don't be me. When I'm 80 and looking back on my life, I would rather have played with my kids than not played with my kids. And so I play with my kids when I feel nothing. The second idea is to remember that you're still an organic being. The rules don't change no matter how you feel. Because this whole I feel nothing, therefore I do nothing dynamic pretty quickly becomes a self-perpetuating problem, because you don't just stop going to work or going to school or hanging out with friends. You also stop eating and sleeping, or eat and sleep too much. You stop using your body in healthy ways, and the result of those changes or decisions is that your brain stops working properly. Trying to solve the mysteries of the universe and understand the purpose for your existence and why you feel the way you feel and why your emotions are doing what they're doing, that's a pretty tall order on a good day. So thinking you're going to tackle those questions with a half-awake, malnourished, blood and oxygen-deprived brain is a pretty unrealistic scenario. You still need to sleep when you feel nothing. The rules don't change. But you also still need to practice sleep hygiene, because the emptiness can lead to insomnia, where we can't sleep, or hypersomnia, which is when you sleep 10, 11, 12, 16 plus hours a day. Both are going to wreak havoc on your mental functioning and keep you in this downward spiral. You also still need to move your body when you feel nothing. Again, your brain needs blood and oxygen to fight through this. The neurotransmitters are the antibodies to the emptiness. Blood comes from your heart and oxygen comes from your lungs. You're welcome. I know I just blew your mind with that knowledge, but your heart and your lungs don't work very well when you're sedentary, when you don't move. I know that for a lot of people, it can feel miserable to be physically active. Physical activity isn't even super pleasurable for a lot of people, even when your emotions are working properly, but it is essential. The rules don't change. Another area of life that can easily become a downward spiral when your emotional health starts to decline, of course, is your nutrition. When your brain is not getting all the caloric energy, nutrients, and vitamins it needs to function properly, one of two things typically starts to happen. Your emotions either intensify and become more erratic, which leads to mood swings and bad decisions, or you get the emptiness. You start to become numb to your feelings, and you enter a sort of zombie-like state where you exist, but don't really feel much of anything. I obviously see this with people who have mood disorders, but I also see this happen to people who have restrictive eating disorders like anorexia or ARFID. When you're experiencing either of these emotional states, I certainly understand that preparing a nutritious home-cooked meal is typically not on your agenda, because you're just trying to survive each day with the scraps of physical and mental energy that you have. One potential way out of this spiral is to rely on meals that are nutritionally complete, but don't really require much, if any, work from you. So obviously one opportunity there, one idea is to get food delivered or pick up food. Biggest downside there is typically cost, though. It's not super cost effective to do that. So today I want to introduce you to another option for easily meeting your nutritional needs during periods of low energy and motivation, which is the sponsor of today's video, Huel. Huel makes a product called Huel Black Edition Powder, which is literally a complete meal in powder form. So you just mix the powder with water. You don't even need a special fancy liquid in a shaker bottle, and then you drink your entire meal. And I think the fact that you can drink it is actually a huge plus too, because it is possible to be so depressed or so exhausted that even chewing your food feels like more trouble than it's worth. I know, because I have been there. Huel Black Edition also comes in a wide range of delicious flavors. My personal recommendations are the caramel coffee and the cinnamon roll, but I've tried almost all of them, and I've liked everything I've tried. They were kind enough to offer my viewers 15% off using the link below or the QR code on the screen. I highly encourage you guys to go check them out. This stuff can be a real lifeline in dark times. My third and final strategy that I want to share with you guys today is to not pull away from the things you love when you feel empty inside. Your hobbies and your relationships can easily fall victim to the same patterns as your self-care habits and your willingness to complete tasks, which is, if you don't get anything from it, why keep doing it? Why go to work if there's no paycheck? The only thing that feels worse than feeling completely alone in this world from a relational standpoint is realizing that you weren't alone when you thought you were, but now you are, and it's because you pulled away from people who really did care because you couldn't feel that they cared, and now they're gone. That's a mistake that I will never repeat again as long as I live, no matter how empty I happen to feel, because it has fooled me more than once. And it's the same thing with your hobbies. Everything, enjoying things, in my opinion, is to some degree a skill. And if you stop doing something you love for a long period of time and then try to pick it up again later, you often don't love it right away. For me, at least, it typically takes me a little bit of time to reignite my passion for something. I kind of feel like it's a little bit like trying to start a car that's been left outside in like a Midwestern winter. Those pistons are ice cold and it takes a bit to warm them up. And so it's hard to just jump right back into something when you stop doing it for a long time. Don't let the emptiness lie to you. Do not let it convince you that you don't love those people anymore or you don't love those things anymore. You haven't become a different person. You're just experiencing a very distressing but very temporary glitch in your system. For me, at least, these 3 strategies that I've outlined for you today have helped me survive those glitches. Because if you can just, it's a war of attrition. It really, really is. If you can just survive and not make decisions that destroy your life, it will come back eventually. At least it always has for me. As always, I hope this helps. If it does, I hope you will consider returning here again for more content, and I will see you later. Take care. Actually, before I go, did you notice I finally bought a new shirt? Some of you have mentioned that I own about 5 shirts and they all look the same. So this is for you guys today.